individuals, they have access to and they can participate the outcomes that we're targeting in our school. So that's this idea of equity. And in the tool, as I said before, I thought I'd love to pat myself on the back, but I wasn't this smart. My colleagues were the ones who were like, you know what? Equity is not just a 4 on a 0 to 4 scale. Oh, and then we're equitable. They really did a nice job of including even the word equity actually itself is not the word that's being used most often, but the concept of that inclusive voice and understanding outcomes is what you'll see. And so a few of the items, 1.1, 2.1, 3.1, leadership teams are representative of the community and inclusive teaming procedures are more clearly defined. So again, we don't have to even say equity here, but we understand what we're getting at there. Data is used for decision making is disaggregated throughout the tiers and support and monitor the equitable use of classroom practices. So which practices work and are culturally responsive. So those are some of those item examples. Again, this slide deck has at the end of it multiple slides, this whole section on equity and on classroom practice and mental health. So if you want to get any of these resources, you can get them there. But this goes back to what we published over the many years. Discipline, proportionality, and problem solving, a data guide for school teams. This published in October of 23. And the TFI 2.1 was published last in 2017. 5 years between then when that was published and the most current research and thinking around this. So just a couple examples of why sort of now was the time. Classrooms, I think, again, I always knew, even in the 2.1, it just does not do enough to ask the right questions about what's going on in our classrooms. And this kind of idea of if PBIS practices are not happening in the classroom, then we're really not doing PBIS at our school. We're not organized. If you're like me and you've been a part of this for a really long time, we used to do things like you'd present PBIS to the whole school and you'd vote. Do we have 80% buy-in? Great, let's move forward and do this PBIS work. And if we didn't have the buy-in, then we wouldn't do it. At the same time, we would look at our data and we would say, where's it coming from? Is your behavior coming from the classroom primarily or the whole school? And whichever had the most, that's where then you attended to. I remember that way back. Like we thought, oh, it's this or it's this. It's not that you can't still start that way, but the new TFI does a better job of connecting the two. So a couple examples here. There's others you'll see. Educators consistently use proactive preventive classroom practices. Tier 1 includes professional development to support practices in the classroom. The new tool also has improved observation and data collection tools for the classrooms as well. I think that this was one of the most impactful pieces. The old tool, to me, was inconsistent in when it referred to the core practices of PBIS. If you're like me and you'd really wordsmith the heck out of it, it interchanged some different words and different meanings at times. And so we made sure that the new tool was consistent throughout. And we refer to 3 foundational tier 1 practices school-wide. Explicitly teach, prompt, and review expectations. Acknowledge, give feedback, and acknowledge students. Have a system for responding to challenging behavior. Those are the 3 school-wide practices we need everybody on the same page with. And what we want is our classroom to match that. We want those school-wide practices to be connected to how we're managing behaviors in the school. Otherwise, kids are just code switching between settings. So I thought that was there's a lot in here, but we even connected in the school-wide one back to items 1.4, 5, and 7, so you can see the direct connection. So again, I feel like that was a pretty helpful expansion on how we're defining what happens in the classroom. In addition to those school-wide practices, the other classroom practices that are important: relationship building, a safe environment, routines and predictable routines, academic opportunities to respond, active supervision, specific feedback, and a corrective ratio. Again, all practices that we know work And these are the ones that are the most visible in the classroom setting. So we have both. 1.9 is incorporate what we're doing school-wide in our classroom. And 1.10 is make sure the core classroom practices themselves, including these components, are in place. Teachers that can do this and have the support for it, great climate and culture. A much more supportive environment for students to be successful. And then finally, this last one is what's the professional development? So we can't just do all that, but we have to attend to building our staff's capacity, working with each other to understand and making sure that we're differentiating our professional development. So I have an example of a school, like just kind of a mock-up of what that could look like. I'm gonna run through it really fast. But the details are here. So you have a middle school, and they looked at their classroom data, and they're not really measuring their positive proactive classrooms. All right, so they use that process. Core things. What do we want to have happen in our classrooms? How do we support our staff, et cetera? So the goal, 5-to-1 ratio. If you do this kind of work, I've done this work with districts and schools, it's hard work. So many variables to get us to be effective in our 5-to-1 ratios. So they're going to use data. Let's provide professional development, collect data through observation. We're going to give educators specific feedback to help them make a 5-to-1 ratio. We're going to share that data with the staff, create visual prompts, have leadership teams. And we're going to look at how our students impacted across groups in terms of the praise to corrective ratios that they get. So we have a little data, different classrooms, positive corrective ratios overall, where are we at, et cetera. So it's just an example of how you can take the data sheets in the TFI, dig in, but we're really sticking with the same overall PBAS process. Outcomes, data, systems, practices, and equity. All right, so that's classroom. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's classroom. Resources that are available. Again, things that have been published, 23, 25, supporting and respond. This is an exceptional resource, supporting and responding to students' social, emotional, behavioral needs. It's just the index and the map. Oh, thank you, Janet. Of what do we know that works in classrooms? It is broken down by grade level and it's broken down by need and tiers. It's just, it's exceptional. And we're always boosting it. We're always trying to fix links in it and help it out, et cetera. So that's if you're gonna, really think about what's working in our classrooms, that's where I would look. It's also pretty dense. So, take a minute if you're gonna sit down with it. Habits of Effective Classroom Teachers is a nice older resource. So, I don't think we're gonna do about 20 minutes here, a few more sections to go through. So if you have any questions, I did see, Connie had followed up before. I'm just seeing it now. Do the schools now just do the 3.0? I think if you're going to be learning and figuring it out and demonstrating it, doing them side by side, I think is still helpful in the learning process. Once a district feels like it's got its plan in place and knows what to do, you could then just do the 3.0 as well. I mean, schools could still just do they could just jump. Some schools are at that kind of level. I just don't, it just always feels to me like it should be a meaningful district level conversation with school voice represented to make those kind of decisions. So ultimately, in the end, you don't want to be doing both tools when it's all said and done. But how do we get to that point? I think is the part I'm trying to attend to. All right. Integration of mental health. So the explicit integration of supports, and I know that many of the schools that implement PBAS in Minnesota also are using SHAPE and other ways to measure and implementing mental health supports in their schools. So you'll start to see now some of that recognized in items throughout the tiers here. So this is just one example, 1.18, and it attends to internalizing data sets as well as community data sets to understand what's going on in our schools. So climate surveys, attendance, nurse and counselor visit logs, just examples. But the key question is the team expanding beyond just discipline referrals to ask what are the key data sets to tell us about the overall wellness of our students? And by wellness, we mean, social, emotional, behavior competencies. Okay? So that's a good example. And here's the detail of 1.18, but the key here is multiple school and community data sources are used. This kind of work came out of our ISF work that really was looking at when community partners are together, what's the community data that's helping us inform how we're doing in our schools. The idea here is that it's looked at quarterly. Sometimes this data doesn't move very fast. So, disproportionality data can be similar. Month by month might not be as meaningful, but at least quarterly, that might be helpful. So here's some different examples that we shared, ways to think about sources of mental health needs. And then this resource is in each of these sections I've included, if you're going to look at boosting mental health support, here are examples based on what we've demonstrated in the TFI that you could look at. Different practices, systems, data, equity. Again, at the end, more resources available to you. This is the Interconnected Systems Framework. That's a pretty deep dive, but even things as sort of these lighter ones of integrating trauma-informed approach within PBIS, that was published in 2020. Teaching social emotional competencies, that was published in 2018 after the last version of the TFI was updated. Both of these are lighter references, but really good for conceptual. Let's not think of these as separate efforts. Let's not have a trauma team and a PBS team, or let's not do SEL here and do behavior here. This should all be done together. Okay. Crisis response work. If you've been connected to some of these conversations, this says we've been investing in understanding how a public health framework, a PBS framework can be helpful in thinking about crisis response. Crisis response can be think about the climate emergencies that we're having everywhere, flooding, devastation, wildfires, things like that. So schools and communities can be impacted immediately overnight by some of those things. Schools can be shut down, and those are crises. Those impact lots of people. And can we think about what we know in systems work to be prepared and be responding when we have crises? And then we have school violence as well. And so a lot of the work has ebbed between these sort of climate examples and then school violence examples. And what does that look like? And so you'll see some of that language connected now and integrated. It kind of goes back even to the set that talked about, do you have emergency plans? But here, what we're thinking about is, for your crisis procedures, are those linked? Are we consistent? If respectful, responsible, and safe is what we are aiming for our school, let's put our procedures in those words so we keep things simple for our staff and our students. Do your crisis plans include wellness support planning? Can we plan in advance? What does that look like when we need to address and provide some wellness resources and differentiated strategies? So that's item 1.8 emphasizes that quite a bit. And again, pretty big shift from where we were several years ago. Some of the components that you might see in how we think about school crises and emergencies, define what those crisis response routines were, develop a wellness support plan. During it, let's prompt and enact those plans, and after, let's reinforce and evaluate. I think about at the start of the pandemic, schools that were really good at PBS, implementing with fidelity, but had a strong conceptual understanding of it, we're able to lean in pretty fast to say kids are going to be learning from home. What does it look like to be responsible? What does it look like to be respectful? What does it look like to be ready to learn? Can we simplify that? Can we teach those students how to do that on their Chromebooks? Like they were able to take these ideas and kind of go back to the basics. And then you had schools that were still trying to figure out PBIS, and it was not the right time to lean in and to connect the two because they had so much to figure out. That actually taught me a lot about the durability of having a framework. That as the environment around you changes, either slowly or like these crises immediately, is the framework still useful for asking the key questions when you need to simplify things? What's expected of me? How are you going to teach me to do that? How will we know it's working? Those kinds of things. So um, our national team has been involved in responding to, on the behalf of the Department of Ed, in responding to different to violence in different communities and working long term to help those communities, but then to understand and share that with others. So um, there are some very helpful resources here. And for the Minnesota TA team, if you want to think about this more, and you go on the pbis.org webpage under crisis response, the body of that page has been recently refreshed in the past year and is the latest that we understand in terms of some really hard work that's been done in communities that have been impacted. So I think that's a useful read. And that's the conversation I think is a good state level conversation. Okay. All right. Student voice, a couple of ways you might see this showing up across items. This is really about, well, it's family student voice. So it's about the co-designing and the continual attention to the buy-in from your community to your school expectations and your procedures and your instructional practices, addressing systemic barriers, things like that. So we have a couple different examples. Representative group of students is included in reviewing your expectations in your data. Representative groups of your families and your community members are included. And what that looks like is something like this kind of continuous improvement cycle. So your team might develop a teaching matrix, for example, and your staff are going to review that. And we're going to make sure we get the buy-in, but let's make sure it connects with our family, that the language works. And let's make sure that that connects with our students, that it's socially valid for them, and that we continue to attend to this. So maybe our expectations aren't changing year to year, but how those are defined and the examples or the routines, we do need to check in on those periodically to make sure that they are meeting our needs. So here's a snapshot of how to increase voice. So in this example, the school is saying, by the end of the year, we want to increase assembly voice in tier 1 decision-making as measured by enactment of identified practices. And then here's their approach to it: equity, practices, systems data, etc. So kind of pay attention to the time here. Some resources that we have. The School Climate Survey Suite was updated. We have a version 2 of that over the past couple of years, and we have the Feedback and Implementation Survey Suite as well. Lots of really good resources from PBIS apps that can be useful in getting a pulse for what's going on in your community and how that can inform what we're doing. Okay. I'm gonna hop forward so I can make sure that everybody can see these resources. And then maybe this would be a good time to check back and think about, I don't know, action planning was one conversation. But if you think of anything else, drop it in chat now. So there's 3 slides here: the TFI 3.0, the manual, an action planning form. It's a table, but it's pre filled in with the item numbers, if that makes any of us feel better. But it is the key, making sure you have some integrated action planning process and documentation in place. Crosswalk that I showed you before of those items is in here. How to convert previous scores to new scores. Training slide decks across the tiers are all available. So you can grab those. We have equity resources from that section, the classroom practices resources from that section, the mental health resources, crisis response, and then voice, family and youth voice. So again, Karen and Nicole from UConn, I appreciate them. They're able to gather and put all these things together. It's awesome. More here than anybody has time for. Again, unless you're working on that dissertation. And you go ahead and jump in. Okay. The one question, or one of the questions was about action planning. I don't think guidance is different than the way it's been before, which is this has to be contextually relevant to you and your community. So if you take the new TFI and you have a 4 on one item and you have a 2 on another item, sprinkled throughout, but the 4 is the one that, that's our priority right now. That needs to get to a 5 for these reasons, and that's okay. Like there's no external factor saying that the item that's a 2 must get first attention. And we've always, at least Midwest PBS has always provided that recommendation. I think the check and the balance there is let's keep our foot on the gas. Let's make sure we're focused on continuous improvement. So you can get pretty comfortable with that thing's been a 2. It's been a 2 for 5 years. There's nothing we can do about it. At some point, we want to ask the question, why is that something is that not important to us? Why is it not important to us, et cetera? But in most cases, with this expanded rubric, there is a choose your own adventure here. What is going to be the most impactful to you in your community? Put your attention there, and that might be things that are already scored high that need to be higher. So that's my overall take on it. I think that just honors the fact that this is a framework, but you're making the local decisions on its application. I don't know. Aaron, I think you had asked that question. Is that consistent with the TA that you guys provide? Does it feel different to you?
No, that doesn't feel different. I just think teams will feel more overwhelmed unless they get that explicit message. They were pretty good about that with the 2.1. I can see with the 3.0, they'd be like, "Oh, but we got to up our game. We got to do these things."
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, again, some of my colleagues, I think, are better at saying, you know what, actually, it's only about 15 more minutes per tier than it takes. I mean, so we have good research that said it's actually, when it's all said and done, it isn't adding a ton to it, but it is more dense. I mean, think about the folks around the table here, the TA team who knows this work really well. I can unpack one of these items and spend an afternoon on it in terms of where did that come from, I think. So I just want to, so like you guys, let's honor where schools are at, how they're feeling about it. Let's encourage schools to keep asking themselves good questions and just attending to an action plan. What are we trying to get done? When do we want to get it done by? I think that type of support is the most useful. Otherwise, you lose people. A few more minutes. Any other questions or thoughts about the 3.0? Any other barriers folks are seeing? Oh, by the way, the answer to the question is now the time. That's my technical response. It's great. It's doing everything we want to do. I'm not, it's not for me to say jump on, and it certainly doesn't mean we even know enough about it. But I can see lots of schools who would appreciate how it could help them.
I have a couple of questions, I think, Brian. Um, One is if a school decides maybe this is for us and, want to start exploring that, um, are you continuing? Well, it's kind of a two-part question, I guess. So that's one, if they're in that maybe stage. Um, are there continuing research projects that you're still engaged with around this? And do you want to know if schools are interested in this?
Um, it's a good question. It's now available to everybody through PBS assessment. I think I lost track of it. It might be this Friday. I think there's some additional trainings going up that you can get directly from PBS apps on the tool itself and administration of the tool. I don't think the original study that we had through UConn is still active. I think we closed that out in terms of what do we know so far. So I don't have a necessary mechanism off the top of my head where those schools would get involved. I do think local examples in Minnesota would be helpful. So if we could find some schools that'd be willing to teach us more about what does this mean in the context and what everybody knows there, that's how I think I'd approach it.
That sounds great. And I might just say if there are schools that are interested in Minnesota to reach out to your regional coordinator and let them know that you're interested in that so that they can also help connect you to those resources.
Yeah.
Is that fair, Aaron? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Well, this is extremely helpful. I think I know this is a small group and it's been really wonderful to just have access to you, Brian, here and be able to get these notes and insights and overview of some of the things. What's great about, this opportunity is that we're recording this and we can, use this for future opportunities as well for, when teams are starting to get more interested. Um, so we'll have this kind of for us to look back at and also for teams to be able to look back at as they're getting started. So thank you so much for this and for being with us. And even though we have this small group, this is still going to be very useful for us to have this recording going forward. So we really appreciate you taking more time to be with us after the keynote and share this information. This is really helpful for all of us and for anybody who wasn't able to be here and is in the other session for
Sure.
multiple reasons. We're coordinating a lot of different things here. So we can also review this as a team as well.
I'm
So.
prepared for it to go viral and just blow up.
Well, it's already
Dozens,
streaming on YouTube too.
dozens of views. It's gonna be amazing.
So we really, really, really appreciate it. And thank you again so much for being here.
Of course.
I'll just let everyone know now too, that this is the end of this session. And so, let me get the right thing up here. I need to have more computers today than I have going. I usually have at least 2 going. Okay, so the next, right now, as I lose my voice, we're going to have a break for 10 minutes. The next session in here is going to be with Ashley McSuga-Gage on setting a strong foundation, tools and techniques for coaching educators. So that session is in here. If you want to be in the student behavior tips and tricks with Holly Spessard, that is going to be in the other link. So you are welcome to take a break now and join whichever session it is that you want to be in. And thank you again, Brian. And you are welcome to stay with us throughout the day as well, but we also know you have lots of things competing. So feel free to do whatever you need to do, but thank you so much for being with us. Here's Ashley. All right, hello.
Hi.
We are just switching sessions. So Brian just wrapped up and you'll be of course with us next. So we'll get started in like 9 minutes, it looks like. I'll make you a co-host so you can share your screen if you want to try that out.
Okay. And does that give you the full view without the... Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
All right. And let me just try a video quickly. And the animations are working.
Yes.
Okay. And let's just make sure the sound works.
Other teachers.
Yep.
So I want you to turn and wave at those teachers, wave at the principal.
All right, cool.
It's almost like you've done this before.
I mean, it's been a minute. It's been a minute, but all right, good.
Well, thank
Now,
you.
some teachers aren't here, but they
Oh,
want to.
Come on, PowerPoint. How many folks do you have?
I'm not sure how many are going to join this session. We'll see kind of as it gets started. So we're in the transition in between.
Mhm.
We have like 123 registered for the whole institute, but they can choose between this and one other session.
Okay. Given kind of what you've seen so far about the amount of time and how interactive are they?
Well, so in the first one, there was some things going on in the chat. They
Mhm.
do have the ability to unmute and ask questions if you want them to be able to do that.
Okay.
There were some things going in the chat. This last one was Brian was doing overviewing the TFI 3.0 with us, so we had a
Mhm.
smaller group for that.
Okay.
So we were kind of active, but not a whole lot so far, I guess.
Okay. So then I had in there, I was going to ask them to just like to type what their current roles are, and then ask them to share a little bit about when they've seen someone manage a classroom really well, what were some of the things that they've done. Do we feel like that's going to fall flat? Because I can also skip it if we need to, or you think it'll be okay?
I think that's great if you try it. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll give you some interaction if they're quiet too.
Okay. No problem.
When are we gonna leave?
So when we get started, I'll just introduce you quick, Ashley, and then I'll kick it off to you. And then so we go 11:25 to 12:15, and then after you they have lunch break. So
Okay.
it's a little bit longer break.
Oh, all right. So like I'm standing between them and lunch.
You are, but not, I mean, people can be enjoying their lunch while, if they can't wait too.
They're on a snack break now, so they'll come back fueled.
Oh, good.
We don't have a lunch for them. So, yeah.
I realized I meant to pop in a couple of pictures of the zoo that lives at our house. And so I'm just quickly throwing those in, but I'm glad they're not in the handout PDF anyway, because I'm gonna throw in the kids, so works out. Perfect. I did not. I usually list a bunch of free and low cost resources and put web links in, but given that things are changing so rapidly, um, I'm happy to just consult with folks and with you, Erin, and like as we go, kind of put those together just because I don't know the state of where things will be, and I don't want to direct people to the things that might be moving.
That sounds good. Brian was able to share some things too. But we are more than happy to just we can add things in later too. There's if you have like a resource slide or something that you wanted to add, you could always add that later.
Okay.
Um, we're we're putting all of the presentation slides in a Dropbox that we're sharing with participants.
Okay.
So we could wait if there's some things that you want on there that aren't on there.
Mhm.
We could also just have you send those to us later. No problem. All right. Well, it is 11:25. So Ashley, are you good to go?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start the recording and started. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our second breakout session here this afternoon or this morning, not afternoon yet. We are going to hear from Dr. Ashley Maksuga Gage. She's a senior research associate in the Special Education Policy and Practice Division of WestEd. Dr. Maksuga Gage has extensive experience with us identifying, or I'm sorry, with identifying and supporting teachers in the implementation of class-wide positive behavior support practices through the application of multi-tiered systems of support to professional development and the implementation, sustainability, and scale up of school-wide positive behavior interventions and support efforts. She has worked as a special education teacher, a PBIS trainer, and technical assistance specialist, provided professional development to schools, districts, and states, coordinated teacher preparation programs, including fieldwork applications, trained doctoral candidates, designed and implemented research studies, and supported statewide initiatives to increase inclusion of students with disabilities in general education. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Ashley Maksuga Gage, and go ahead and take it away. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you everyone for having me today. I really appreciate being here and I love working with your state. I get to do so in a variety of capacities and it has always been one of my favorite places. Whenever I come to Minnesota, I get to see how far ahead you all are of most places in the country. You tend to do things extremely well and in a really coordinated way that most places don't. And so I feel very lucky to be with you. Thank you for having me again. All right, so we have a short amount of time together. I have been told that I may be the only thing standing between you and your lunch. Although you are on screen with me. So should you have said lunch or other snacks, I wouldn't know. Even if I did know, I would be completely fine with it. I am a little bit of a casual presenter, I will tell you this. So feel free to unmute, feel free to put things in the chat. I cannot necessarily see the chat. Oops, see the chat right now. So I'll ask that Aaron or Aaron monitor that and just let me know if things pop up. The first thing I just want to say is that I am actually qualified to talk to you about this. And I put this little video in here and I'll switch it quickly because it can make you kind of sick to know how old my audience is whenever I'm talking to a group. And if you know what this is, then maybe we get each other. And if you don't, then you're younger than me. And so you have to excuse my tech skills. But the reason that I am qualified to talk to you about all of this is that I was a classroom teacher in a variety of settings, mostly low SES in urban settings, although I have worked in rural places as well in New York City, Hartford, East Coast. But then I've worked for a variety of different places. And so when you have your PBIS coach that comes in from your school or from your region who works with your school-based coaches, I've done all that. I've also worked at the state level and been the person who comes in to work with those coaches. And then I've worked at the university level. And if you look in the very top corner up there, there are a lot of people in my house who require behavioral strategies as well. Not to say that I always do it very well. There are children. The two in the top are mine. There's also, I recently moved back to New York City from Florida, and we have a garden apartment, an extra child that lives in my house, and she's there with my 3 dogs. And in a moment of weakness, we got a kitten, and he as well requires behavioral strategies. I am also fortunate, in addition to working with the PBIS folks in Minnesota, to work with your lifespan group that focuses on positive supports. And so I work with Rachel Freeman and her group. I was actually here this summer at the conference that was focused on that work. And so I hang out with the Institute for Community Integration as well. So I promise you that I'm not just telling you about this, I'm telling you about it because I've done it and it works. And so that's why I have a little bit to stand on of a leg. So I would love to know just a little bit about you all and what your role is. And the reason I ask that is because what I'm going to present to you today is not actually anything that is rocket science. It's not hard, it's not crazy, but it is something that, depending on what your role is, you may need to be the person teaching someone else how to do. And so I'd love to know if you're a classroom teacher, if you're a classroom teacher who's serving as a mentor for other teachers. Are you a school-based coach, school psychologist, a district level person? Just what's your role? And within that role, because for instance, if you're a special educator who's in a resource position, do you have the purview where you are pushing into someone's classroom or helping the other adults in the building? Oh, I can see the chat now. Okay, social worker, coach, ASD specialist, assistant principal. Fantastic. Superintendent. Oh, okay, got it. Interventionist, implementation specialist, regional coordinator. I know some of these names. I've seen you before. We've hung out, at least on Zoom. Okay. Mentor. All right, so you are my people. This is exactly who I'm talking to today. All right, so you're all people who are trying to get the other adults to change their behavior, correct? And for those of you who are on camera, I'm kind of seeing nods. I'll take a thumbs up in the chat. Yes. Okay. So the first part of the presentation, what I want you to do is to think about this from the lens of, these are the things, the critical features of what I need to teach people who are struggling. And then the second half is what I'm going to tell you about that I've done to do that, to help the adults with their behavior change, particularly around tier 1. And if you have questions related to that, like I said, feel free to pop them in the chat. Feel free to just unmute and ask. The other thing I will say, and I genuinely mean this, I have my email at the end of the presentation. Erin has my email. I am happy to Zoom with any of you after. I am happy to schedule a meeting with you and talk about your particular context and help you brainstorm or answer questions or think about something that you may be dealing with, because this is a short time together, but I feel that it is incredibly important to talk about. I am from New England and I'm back in the Northeast, and so I may talk fast. I apologize. I hope I am at least moderately entertaining as I stand between you and the lunch. But those are my personal goals for today. I would like you to leave with an overview or an understanding of what some of those features are that we want to work on for folks, and an idea of how you might go about setting up a structure for coaching people who either did not get the foundational skills or did not learn the foundational skills in the first place, or who are not exhibiting those skills. And what I'm going to tell you from the get-go is, in all honesty, it doesn't matter which one it is. So if the person that you're working with who is managing a classroom can't because they didn't learn it, or is not for whatever reason, it's the same problem, and we have to work around that. So the first thing I want to ask you to reflect on is think about a teacher, whether that's yourself when you were a teacher, and hey, I'm all for that. If your self-confidence and self-efficacy is super high and you're like, I was the best classroom manager I ever knew, I love it. But think about someone who, when you walked into their room or when you walk into their room, you're like, this person has it, whatever it is, okay? What made them an excellent classroom manager? Like this classroom you walked into and you don't have to worry, or you can even walk by sometimes. And so this is a picture of Christina. Christina was one of my former students. I used to run a pre-service teacher program. And so she's up here with permission. Because she is one of those people for me. And what I will tell you is, and what I would love for you to pop into the chat, and I said 3 here, but since our time is short, I'll just take one thing. Give me one thing that is observable and measurable. So not just, they were dynamic, they were fabulous. I want something that if I walked into Christina's classroom, I could see and or hear that would be happening that made her an excellent classroom manager. And I'll give you mine for Christina just as an example. Christina's classroom was always highly organized and color-coded. So she would have her agenda up with the schedule for their day. It would be color-coded. And then when the kids were going to different areas, the color code of the area they were going to for their particular activity matched. And so the kids had a visual, because she taught kindergarten, that had both words, but the color attached in case they couldn't read those words or in case English was their second language. And those things matched and mapped around the classroom. So that was just one thing that I could see or hear that was related to her structure. So if you could, for me, think of that person for you and pop at least one thing in the chat that you know or you could see about that person when you go in their room. So I'm seeing a lot about clear expectations and then routines to go with those. And I would 100% agree that that's a huge piece of it. Organization, the interaction, right? Eye contact, calling folks by name. And what I love, Angie, about what you put there is that those things that you do, those observable and measurable things, build the relationships. And this happens a lot when we talk about behavior and we talk about changing an adult's behavior or a kid's behavior, right? People get very turned off. They're like, oh, you're just, using someone in like a Pavlovian, experiment, or you're doing the Big Bang Theory chocolate penny, here you go. But it's not true, right? If we have somebody who's having positive interactions because they've set up an environment where that's happening, it naturally builds a good relationship. And when you think about how you make friends or how you develop relationships with people in general, so like let's take somebody out of the classroom for a second. You make a friend because you like them and you like spending time with them. You like being in their presence. And the same is true of the kids in a classroom and the teacher in the classroom with the kids. And so if we can improve these things that you're listing and we can help them do these, that will have the effect of improving the relationship because it makes sense that it would, right? The things are tied together. Positive greetings when you walk into the environment again. And sometimes you need to break this part apart for the teachers and help them understand it. If somebody says hi to me when I walk in a room, I'm more likely to say hi to them back. And whether that's a classroom or somewhere else. Oh, my kid said the other day that their PE teacher makes them favorite student, and all three kids clearly aren't their favorite one. And it made me curious. Absolutely. And I love that idea of wondering about that and then maybe even asking that teacher or going to watch what they do and seeing if you can figure out, like, again, observably and measurably, not just they have a great rapport, but what is it? What are they doing? I guarantee you it's not anything that is that tricky or out of the ordinary. What is great about everyone in this room is that you were able to do this. You were able to think about that person, think about your interactions, think about what you've observed, and identify those things explicitly. What I'm going to tell you about a teacher who's struggling is that they can't do this. If they're struggling to manage their classroom and you were to say to them, what is someone else doing really well? Or what do you think helps them manage their classroom? Or why do you think you're having a hard time? Just like if you're asking a kid who's struggling to read, they're probably not going to be able to tell you these things. And if I can't tell you why it's not going well or what would make it go right, then I can't do it. So part of your role is helping them to figure that out. Okay. So what are, and again, we have 3 here, but for the sake of time, give me 1. What would you say are or is the top or one of the top 3 challenges that you see in the classrooms for the teachers and kiddos you're supporting? So off task or task avoidance, definitely. Tech challenges, lack of engagement. Defiance or off task. Okay. Janet, you wrote a word in yours that I think is really important, or a few words. You said what appears to be refusal or defiance. And this can happen, I think, really easily when we have something that is a tier 1 issue in a classroom, which is if there's not something to engage with, or if the expectations for engagement aren't clear, or if there's too much transition time, or if there's too much time between activities, and a kid is pulled off task or pulled into something else, then those things that could be solved with tier 1 classroom management strategies become things that escalate into, for individual kiddos or groups of kids, things that become defiance, disruption, and then sometimes much bigger behavioral issues. And so oftentimes by the time you all get called in, it will seem like the classroom is completely, as described, out of control, unmanageable, or you have a child that they'll say just needs to be moved or removed or have their own behavior intervention plan. When in reality, the base of a lot of these things, if that was addressed, would lead to a significant reduction or elimination in some of the other things that are happening next. Okay. So when we're thinking through these pieces, again, I spend a lot of my time focusing on tier 1, even though it might not seem to the person who is referred to me or who is asking for my help like that's where the need is. But I would say 90% of the time it actually is. And helping them to understand that, the person that I'm working with, is half the battle. in general, when we're thinking about PBIS, we talk about classroom positive behavior interventions and supports. And everybody loves a school-wide PBIS. That's great. That's like when you have a condo and you're in a condo association or a homeowners association, everybody's like, oh, the best part of this is that I don't mow. I don't paint the sign. I don't do any of those things, right? And that's great. They're fine with it. But if all of a sudden the HOA is like, so let me tell you about the color that I want your living room to be, everybody's like slamming the door in your face. Because the classroom to them is their own sacred space. And for some reason, there is a huge resistance to the idea that those two things merge. And honestly, what we talk about for the classroom is no different than the school-wide. It's just the application in that context, but that can be really difficult. And so a couple of things to think about when you're going to work on these things with someone. The first is coming at it in a way where it is true professional development for skills rather than something that is punitive or discipline related. So I saw a lot of assistant principals in here. I saw superintendent, some of those pieces. A couple of ways that we've done that in the past. If teachers have goals that they write each year related to what they will do for their growth related to academics or to teaching, having a goal related to behavior or behavior management. So it just becomes part of something that they're working on, and that's a school-wide initiative. Having PD built into your regular staff meetings around this. So having a skill or strategy or something related to classroom PBIS that's a focus for the staff for that month or for that year. Having someone who works with teachers who are struggling, who is not their direct evaluator. So if it's a peer coach, then that's fine. But whenever possible, the peer coach is maybe somebody who's not on their team. So in a couple of our secondary situations, we've had it where there might be a school psychologist for the 6th grade team and one for the 7th grade team. And if it's a 6th grade teacher who needs support, it's the 7th grade person who helps them, and vice versa. So that there's a bit of distance and space where they feel safe to work on things and talk about things together. And so when you think about these pieces, this is an older version of the guide for all of the classroom management strategies that's on the website. There's a newer version as well. Either one works. These are documents that the Technical Assistance Center established that you, as someone who is going to teach or work on a skill or strategy, should use as your resource to pull materials to teach. Do not ever hand this to a teacher, please. They don't need it. They don't have time for it. It is painful for you to give that to someone and have them go through it. But if you see that someone is struggling with how to write expectations, you go to this guide or something else like this. And within it, especially the new version, there are lots of hyperlinks to videos, to tutorials, to lessons, to resources you could use to create a quick direct instruction lesson for someone to help them work on that particular skill. There are also practice briefs on the Technical Assistance Center website, which will give you smaller, digestible versions of particular pieces of these things as well. A couple of books that are out there on this too, if you wanted to do a PLC or a learning study with your teachers. I love the one on the left. I'm going to tell you now, it's older. It's 2014. Tim has not updated it. Super quick, easy read. You can get it on Amazon or eBay or wherever. Buy a used one. Reproduce it. I didn't say that. Oh, you're recording me. Don't reproduce it. Do it the way that you should with copyright and all those good things. The chapters are small. They're like 5 to 7 pages. So it can be a really quick thing that you use as a companion. Very clear and straightforward. Awesome chapter in there on function of behavior to also help your teachers start to understand that. Because behavior is behavior. It's not personal. And that's another place where people get really hung up because they start feeling like this kid is doing this to me. And once we can take the sting out of that, we can help people get their power back, right? Which is important. A lot of times when someone is struggling with classroom management, they can feel like they have no control over their day, over what's happening. And that is a terrible place to be in. And so one of the first things I work on with a teacher who is struggling is telling them that I can't promise I'm going to make everything better. I can't change anything that happens outside of their classroom. And I'm come at them with empathy of, you have every right to be mad, sad, whatever you are feeling. But wouldn't it be great if we could make your day a little better, you as the adult? And the way I can do that is you can change what happens in that classroom. And so let's just try it. Because the worst that can happen is it's going to stay the same as it is. The best that could happen is maybe we make a change and it works. And the thing is, the first point to teach anyone is that the behavior is functionally related to that teaching environment. Is it the whole story? No. But it's the most important part of the story, because if you can get them to understand and believe that, then that means that they can affect change. If they think they have no control, then they have no power. And so it's really important to teach function to everyone in your building, just the basics of it. Okay, this video, which we don't have time to go all the way over, but I think is a really great one, is free online. This is Anita Archer. Has anyone ever seen this before? And you can give me like a little thumbs up with your video or anything else. I'll just go to a little piece of it. So this is, she shows active participation. And what she does is she goes through, she's getting set up to teach a lesson. But if you want to have somebody identify, like you did, a really great classroom manager, this is an awesome little video. I am going to show 30 seconds of it. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. But just watch this little part where she starts to talk about her expectations, or she teaches them how to give her attention. She's never met this class before.
That we have honored them, acknowledged them, eyes
Talking about the cameras in the room.
Never look at the video or the teachers again. All your eyes will be on me. All right, perfect. Now, if I pick up your pencil and I move it, I want you to go where your pencil is going. Okay, so looking up here. Now, you are in what grade, everyone? Second. Boy, by the time you're in second grade, you've had many different teachers. And as a result, you have many different things you've learned. So I got to take a minute to teach you how to be my students. First thing, when I teach, I need to have you sitting up. Boy, you're sitting right up, not standing up, but sitting up. And not slumped over, but sitting up. Perfect. Excellent. Good job. And you need to be looking right at me. Oh, good job looking here. And you need to look as smart as you can. Oh, a smile. That was a smart touch. Oh, very good. Oh, hands folded on your desk. That is very smart. Nodding. That shows you're paying attention. Excellent. Oh, looking very good. So everybody, hang out for just a moment. Lean over, hang out. When I say ready, I want you to sit up, look at me, and look as smart as you can. 1, 2, 3, ready? You're ready? You're ready? You're ready? Hang out one more time. And 1, 2, 3, ready? You're perfect.
Okay. So in the span of about 20 seconds, she just did almost everything we talked about. She set the expectation. She told them exactly what she wanted. She had 3 things that she wanted them to do, which was to sit up straight, look at her, and then she said smart, but she operationally defined smart. She reinforced them for doing the right thing. Kiddo in the front who was rocking back and forth on his seat, who was kind of tipping the chair, she didn't put attention toward that, but she did use proximity and come closer to him. What you would see if we continued in the video is that the minute he's back on task, she reinforces him specifically. Showing someone a video like this, rather than pointing out their own flaws, but asking them to look at what they see that's going right, or teaching them what's going right, is another way that's a little less threatening and a little less difficult for them to kind of take in that information. This video shows all the things in a very brief amount that are in classroom PBIS. Okay. So the first thing is thinking about structure, and this is where you're going to go through with the teacher and think about their own structure, what they're going to do. And this is when we talk about kind of that off task or the transition time comes into play here, what they want the students to do and how they're going to arrange that physical environment. I would say the biggest bang for your buck anytime you're working with someone is number 2, which is thinking about the expectations. Because in most cases, what I find is that the teacher doesn't actually know what they want the kids to do. And so having them figure that out or helping them figure that out in a way that's easy for them to say out loud and remember is huge. I always tell them that it just needs to be about 3 things. People will tell you 3 to 5, but it needs to be something that they can roll off their tongue quickly and are the 3 most important things. If they can figure that out for most of the routines in their classroom and create a matrix, this is an example of one where we had a shared community space where all of the classrooms were open and didn't have doors. And so we had the teachers work together because they also had the 2 grade levels together, 2, 3, to create one. And even this I felt like was too much, to be honest, but we edited it down quite a bit. And so for each one of those different settings, that's what they landed on as the most important things. And we actually projected this up, and I gave each set of teachers, I paired them together, one from the 2nd grade, one from the 3rd grade, and they had 2 columns each that they filled in. And then we looked at it as an entire group and we talked through it. And we said, well, what would be, reasonable? What makes sense? Can a kiddo truly have a 0 level voice at dismissal? Because that's what they originally had there. And we said, no, they're in 2nd and 3rd grade. Like, that doesn't make sense. And so it was very much a collaborative conversation. You can do things like that. And again, a matrix is not a document for a child. It's not even a document necessarily for a family. This is a document to get a teacher remembering and thinking about and on board with, oh, this is what I want. When you have this, you can teach them how to reinforce this, how to then respond with consequences. You can do all the other things, but until they know what they want, they can't do that. So working with someone, even on something like this, is huge. Had a couple of videos of showing you how they did that. Then thinking about the prompting, you can have the kids help with this piece. And so giving them ideas for activities where the kids actually make some of the things that go, and then putting them up in the environment, right? Having little things that are pre-made, pre-put around, can be used from year to year, can be used across teachers, is great. So just all of the different prompts, the active supervision, someone earlier in the chat had said, is everywhere all at once. But there are truly teachers who haven't thought about that, haven't thought about like walking around and being in different spaces. We had a teacher once who had a computer lab class and had their desk in the front of the classroom and all the computers faced the other way and couldn't figure out why the students weren't getting their projects done. And we said, why don't you just move your desk to the back and then have your meetings with students in the back? And it completely changed the classroom just by reconfiguring, because then you can see the screens. And so something as simple as that just maybe another set of eyes can help with. And then, the evaluation piece. Sometimes you might have people that are using apps, Class Dojo. I don't know if that's still popular, if that's no longer popular. It was for a period of time. The creator of it is a super cute guy from England who's never been in a classroom. I don't know if that helps you if you had problems with it, but he did know about technology at some point. You might have office discipline referrals from the classroom or other things. There is also something to be said, though, for any of these strategies that teachers are working on or things that they're doing. If it is feeling so frustrating that the teacher is incredibly upset, that is information too. It's not necessarily technical evaluation data, but if the kids are upset, the teacher's upset, that does tell you that there is something wrong and that we need to go back and maybe take some observation data or other things. The active engagement piece, there's lots of different things related to that. So changing the way that the instruction is being done. One of the easiest ways is to just change the number of opportunities to respond by changing the ways that they respond. So making something that would have been an individual response question into an opportunity for the whole group to respond by making it choral, by making it something where they hold up a hand, where they use technology to respond so that everybody gets a chance, where they turn and talk to a peer, where they have group roles. So not even necessarily changing the activity itself, but just changing how they respond is one of the quickest and easiest ways. And so helping somebody to adjust their instruction or to look at the instruction in the curriculum that they're teaching and think about how they could do that is another great way to support. And like I said, there's a variety of different things we can use to do that. Reinforcing behavior, you will often hear people say that you have to have some kind of token economy in your classroom. For a person who cannot manage their classroom, that is a nightmare because they can't set expectations to get the kids to already come from their desks to the carpet. Also, adding on a token economy for someone who can't be consistent with just their expectations kind of sets them up for failure a lot of the time, because a token economy requires me to have the tokens, distribute the tokens, be able to cash in those tokens, do it consistently across kids. There's so many pieces of that sometimes that is too much. And so helping them to start out with things that are less intensive, and when I say intensive, I mean for the teacher to implement, is a good step if you can. And also, you don't have to have every single thing in every single classroom all of the time. The only thing that every teacher has to be able to do is give specific and contingent praise, like the way Anita Archer did. Oh, that's a smart touch, sitting up straight, eyes on me. That's it. That's the only one that I have as mandatory when I go into any classroom. All these others are like in a toolkit that I can pull out when I need them. And I don't want to see somebody using them all the time at once, because that's too much effort with everything else that we're asking them to do. This is a video which I will send to Erin and she can send out to you, of an art teacher who created a Bob Ross flash mob painting day for her students. And it is amazing. I love it with all my heart. And the reason it is so great is because the students were actually learning painting techniques while painting along with Bob Ross in this art class. And my point of this is that this was the reinforcement, okay? This was the activity that was contingent on the behavior that was the curriculum, which was learning how to paint with these skills. And a lot of times, again, when we think about reinforcement, people get all up in arms because we're going to give them candy. I'm not interested in giving you candy. I'm really not. What I'm interested in doing is doing things that are fun for me and for you. This is fun for them. And you're not going to do it every time. But if you work towards something special like this, it fits with the curriculum. It's reinforcing. And I'm going to tell you right now, because I watched your faces for those of you on camera. You were like, oh my God, the Bob Ross thing. Like somebody popped a heart in, right? That builds a relationship, because that is a shared experience that was fun, that is a happy memory. Just like if we're building a friendship, right? That's how we do it. So again, helping teachers to recognize that or to set up something like that is huge. That's a great way to help them do reinforcement. And that, I'm going to argue, is better than trying to teach someone to set up a super complicated token economy that they can't follow through on. Okay. Oh, it started playing. It has music. The other thing is, just like for reinforcement, same thing with the inappropriate behaviors. We don't need to use all the things all the time. We do need to teach people what an actual error correction is, though, because so often I find teachers who are thinking that they're correcting errors, but they're actually silent. So they'll say, well, I told them to stop that, or I told them that that was the wrong answer, or whatever it is. And actually, when I'm watching them, they might just be shooting them a look or looking up, and it's in their head, like they have said it, but they haven't said it out loud. Or you have the reverse, where kind of like maybe when you get angry at a special person in your life, a partner, a spouse, a dog, a Sphinx cat who just moved into your home, who decided that they were going to climb up every dress you own every time you wear one, and try to like hang from it. When the error correction starts, it doesn't stop. And it just includes everything that you've ever thought of. And that can take a lot of time, a lot of energy. And, I don't know if you read any advice columns or like any of those, like, dear, what is it? Dear Delilah. Like, I mean, it goes on, and it is not good for the relationship with the cat, with the partner, or with the kid in the classroom. Sometimes we have to teach people an error correction. And what I try to say to them is that the error correction has to be a sentence. And it has to just be the thing in the moment. And it has to be paired with what do you want next time to be better or to be different. And that's it. So teaching folks that all these other things are things that, again, can be pulled out and used later and are things that need to be taught because they're misused constantly. Planned ignoring is not planned ignoring if the person who's getting reinforced by ignoring is the teacher, right? Like that has a specific purpose. Time out from reinforcement, again, the kid has to want to be there. If they don't, that's not using time out effectively. So you may have to coach and teach those things. You cannot do all of the things that we just went through at once. You cannot have a consequence chart that is always the exact same because that's not going to work for every kid. And if you try and insist on always following that, you're going to run into pitfalls where you just get stuck. And this is another thing that often happens with some teachers that are struggling is they're like, well, I had to give them the break. Well, if the break is not effective, you didn't. And then also the problem solving with like a sheet is not great for every kid. We had in that same 2-3 community, they had a worksheet that every kid had to fill out. And so we really worked on changing that. And what they finally agreed to was problem solving with an adult. And so that could look like a talk. It could look like the sheet if that was effective. It could look like going to the school psychologist or the social worker who they had a relationship with. It could look like going to their check-in, check-out person. So that one became a variety of options that might be more suited to the individual kiddo. And again, when we say less intensive to more intensive, all of those other toolbox pieces, the intensity is what it takes for the teacher to implement them. And so when you think about how taxing something is on the person that you're trying to work with, think about how much time and labor it takes them to use the strategy. And again, all these things at once are too much. So if we put one in, take something else out. Okay, that was like the quick and dirty overview. Like I said before, there are millions of resources for all of these things everywhere that we can show you. This is a really cute video too, which again, Erin has access to. It was a high school that made a video teaching folks about which words were appropriate to use in school and which ones weren't. And the teachers gave example replacement words like, oh, duck water, for example. But couple of other things that I really like. There is this cheat sheet from the Florida PBIS project that they have on their website. And I did pull up some websites to show you all at the end if I can go fast enough. And there are links to websites and a description of what's on them related to tools for you to use for teaching about any of the things I just talked about. There are also the Iris Center modules on classroom management, and there's video vignettes there, there's web resources, case studies, all that good stuff. There is the CI3T group that is Kathleen Lane's group, and they have a lot of different things on there. They had classroom management things on there. I don't see those anymore, but what I do see that's really helpful is they have some nice things about screening resources that can be good. Y'all have a ton in your state too. The reason I'm not highlighting your state is because I think you know your own resources really well. And so this is just my bid to give you additional things that maybe you hadn't seen before. Okay, when we think about professional development, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you my trick. It is not a trick. It is actually something that you probably know from your own personal life. And I'm just going to ask you to apply it to schools. When we want adults to change their behavior, it typically takes 3 things. Explicit instruction, even if you think they already shoulda, coulda, had it. If they're not doing it, we got to teach them again. They need someone there to support them in some way. And that support looks like giving them feedback. And the other thing is, if they think you're threatening them or they don't like you, it won't work. And I can't sugarcoat that for you. It's just the truth. So you have to find a way to do this where it is either a part of the culture or you can do it where there is no threat to someone's position by doing it. And so we put together a model because we are academics and we love to do so, and we like to publish things because, you know, it used to be that we felt like we needed to keep ourselves employed. We still feel that, maybe a little more right now. But we like to think about this across a continuum because not everyone needs the same level of support, just like with kids. And if you make every teacher do the same level of support with respect to classroom, they will not like you. And that's fair because it's annoying to have to do something I can already do, just like with kids. So we think about this in the same way we think about instruction, right? For a student, for an adult as well. So if you've ever seen any one of these programs that used to be out there, whether it be Peloton, whether it be the 21-day fix, I know that one's like kind of dated now. There was like Beachbody, all of those. It's kind of the same idea, right? Where they have these levels and tiers of support. So the first thing you're going to do is take some baseline measurements. If you're going around your entire school and you're making this an initiative or around a grade level. And there is an app, I don't get a kickback for this, let me just say, called the Student Classroom Observation and Analysis app. And I think they have it for both Apple devices and PC devices. But this was created by Terry Scott in Louisville, who does this research on all the things that we're talking about. It's $2.99. You can download it. You can get this app and you can go into classrooms and you can take data on those classroom management strategies that I profiled in the first part of the presentation. They're already programmed in there. You can also take data on kids, what they're doing. You can take data on teacher behavior. All that's pre-programmed with definitions. You can customize it if you want to as well. You can export that. You can even then email it directly to a teacher. So if you're doing walkthroughs, this is a great thing to use. You can certainly do a variety of things to take the data, but this is just one quick and easy thing that you can use. Once you have that data, you then think about the training you're going to provide. One thing that we've done in the past is we've taken data on an entire school, actually, an entire elementary school. And we took it specifically looking at opportunities to respond, teacher-directed ones during whole group instruction. So since that was what we were targeting as the focus, and that was going to be the focus for the school, after that initial walkthrough, we provided a training. We did the training during a regularly scheduled faculty meeting. It took 15 minutes. Key components of that training, we told them what it was that we were targeting. So direct instruction, here's what the skill is. We said, here are the ways that we know are evidence-based that you can increase those opportunities to respond. We said, hey, if you do that, here's all the good stuff about it. So just like with the workout program, we're like, right, here's the squats, here's how you do them, here's all the awesome things they're going to do to stabilize your core, and then your lower back's not going to hurt, right? So we all love that, which again, cognitively makes sense. We all like to do something good for ourselves. Then we showed them this. This was their data. And I'm going to tell you that this is the most powerful thing you can show people is their own data, because we all love something that's good for us theoretically. But what makes us want to change or do something is seeing our own information. And so if you look at this, you see that the red bars were the percentage of time off task of the students. And the blue line and the numbers were the anonymous, not names, of the teachers, were the teachers' rates of opportunities to respond that they provided during whole group instruction. What do you notice? Anybody? You just call it out for me because my time is getting short. I know I have 4 minutes. Somebody, come on. If you want to be my winner, just yell it out. Let's go. My husband's Midwestern, so if this is politeness, I'm not having it. I'm in New York right now.
The opportunities to respond were lower and the off-task behavior was higher. So there's a correlation. If they were off task, means they must not have had many opportunities to respond, and vice versa.
So in their own school, with their own teachers, everything that the research said panned out. So their teachers that were doing that saw lower percentages of off-task behavior. This makes someone want to play, makes them want to change, makes them want to work because it's their own information, because people inherently are motivated by themselves. It's true. So if you can show them their own behavior, that is a huge helper. So then we said, okay, how are you going to do this? Make your plan, figure it out. You do it, you can do it however you want, but think of something. Then we said, we're going to give you performance feedback. If you weren't the teacher that had already hit the goal that we established, we're going to give you some information about that. If you already hit it, you're not going to get that. So then after that training, 15 minutes over, we went back, we collected more information. It was their job to do the work, right? So if it worked out and they were good after that next screening, we left them alone. If it didn't work out, we gave them specific feedback. Oh, I knew this slide got stuck somewhere. I couldn't find it. Ignore that one. Okay. So then let's say it didn't work out for them. We had to give them coaching, right? So we gave them an additional training in a smaller group, another dose, more specific examples. We maybe looked at their curriculum and gave them things that were tailored to exactly what they were teaching. And then they got emails after a few observations with their own individual data, not the overall data that was anonymous. And then we saw changes in their behavior. And again, you don't need to provide single subject research data graphs to them. But the point is that showing them their change and giving them a little bit extra can make a difference. Okay. Sometimes that's still not effective though. And so we need a little bit more support. And then it really is looking at a problem solving process and a tier 3 for that individual person. And at that point, you may be looking at working with someone else or another person on it together. Okay. And so there's something that we have for free on the Florida PBIS site, which is called the Classroom Assistance Tool, or the CAT. This is in an Excel format, and you can download this. This is an individual inventory of classroom management that breaks down all of those things that are in those 5 areas of class-wide PBIS, but into specific observable and measurable skills, and then essentially breaks it out into 3 different categories. This is not a direct observation, like you don't have to be observing someone and doing this in real time, but you have to have observed them and spent time in their classroom. Typically, when we use this, I suggest having the teacher complete this themselves as a self-reflection, and then having the person who's coaching them also complete it and compare back. Based on that, then forming a plan of where to start and where to work with that particular individual. So when I was going through and I was talking about how we might have like our biggest bang for the buck starting with expectations, when we're thinking about if we're individually working with someone, this is a great way to have that conversation and to do that. And again, these are specific items that were taken from multiple different assessments that all focus on classroom management that align with class-wide PBIS, and is a way for you to objectively talk about those individual problems with that teacher. There's a corresponding piece that is on there too that has strategies that go with those. So this is all really easy, right? It sounds easy on paper. But couple of things. There's nothing new about this. And so people tend to get really frustrated with me when I tell you, because you wanted me to say, I have a magic way for you to fix everyone's classroom management, but I don't. My magic way is you have to do the things that work consistently with fidelity, and you have to teach and reteach people who are in the classroom who either aren't doing something or were never taught to do something, so that they can learn those skills. And they probably need the same thing that kids who struggle need, which is direct instruction, reinforcement, and modeling and support. And so not every time will it work out. It may take a couple of tries before you get there, but over time, also demonstrating your investment and your willingness to come back builds a relationship with that adult, the same way that we want the adult to build the relationship with the kids in their classroom. And so I hope that you all feel empowered to go out there and work with someone. A great way to go about this is to pick one person to partner with and then let the good word of mouth spread. So pick someone who has great street cred in your school, who the other teachers like, have it go well with them, and then let them talk about the fact that their day got better behind your back because they worked with you, and then get some more people to work with you. Happy to help anytime. Thank you for having me. I am 1 minute over. I appreciate all of you. Have a great conference and lunch.
Thank you, Ashley, so much. Thank you for being with us. So many wonderful, good things shared here today. Really appreciate it. And the reinforcement that we know what to do. We just need to coach on doing it. So thank you. Thank you for being here. So everyone, it is 12:17. So we are going to have our lunch break until 1 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, you can come back to join us for the recognition ceremony for our exemplars. And everything for the rest of the day will be back in the first link, in link 1. So come back and join us in there at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ashley.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
All right. I'm going to close this room unless there's any other things. Okay. All right.